parents who have disowned or genuinely stopped loving your child, what happened? Story 1. My ex-wife disowned my son. We both married young when I was in the military, high school sweethearts. She became pregnant 6 months into our marriage, and I don't think she connected with him at all after he was born. The most she did with him was Instagram photo shoots where she painted herself as #1 mommy. When he turned 3, I left the military. A year after that, she ran for the hills. I remember it like it was yesterday. I sat down with her at a local restaurant to talk divorce plans. We split all of our financials and material items down the middle. We finally got to custody for my kiddo, something I dreaded to discuss because fathers never gain custody in my area, and she tells me, I want absolutely no responsibility. I was taken aback, and I asked if she was sure, and she said she was. That one sentence hurt me more than anything else that happened during that time. My biological father wanted nothing to do with me, and now I was seeing it happen with my own child, but with his mother. I received full custody, and she married within a year afterwards. She had another child too. Her parents try their best to be a part of his life, but she still does her best to avoid him. He's 7 now and used to it, but I know it weighs on him heavily. It really but it's life, I guess. Story 2. A little different. I was disowned, but I deserved it. I was in a mess for a long time. My mom couldn't keep bailing me out of trouble and watch me self-destruct anymore. I wasn't living at home. She came to see me one last time to tell me she was done, not to contact her. She would no longer have anything to do with me. She was in pieces. I can't imagine how hard it must have been for her. But it was the best thing she ever did for me. Once she cut me off, my rock bottom came hard and fast. After a little while of living on the streets and my addiction consuming me, I made my way to a detox center, got a few days clean under my belt, and never looked back. That was almost 15 years ago. After I was clean a while, I contacted my mom, and little by little, we built a relationship again, and now we're really close. I am forever grateful to my mom for letting me fall and letting me back into her life. Reply 1. That's vile, and your son is lucky to have you. I'm sorry that you both have to live with this. Hey, cutting off a loved one is never an easy decision to make, but sometimes it's necessary for their own well-being. It takes strength and courage to set boundaries and hold them, even when it means saying goodbye to someone you love. This mother's tough love was the best thing she could have done for her child. Story 3. I have been legally disowned by my father. When I was 11, my mom was diagnosed with terminal cancer. This was her second diagnosis in around 4 years. Obviously, she recovered the first time after intense surgery and a lot of chemo, and he did not want to look after her like he did before. He also had a new girlfriend and her family to look after, apparently, and he had no issues leaving us. When my mom passed away when I was 14, my brother, grandmother, him and I met up to discuss who I was going to live with. The plan was my brother's and his family. Father was never considered. And he showed up and declared that he was in the process of going to court to legally emancipate himself from me. He went out of his way to legally declare that I was no longer his child, just so that my brother, 22 years old with a wife and 2 young children already struggling on one paycheck, couldn't seek child support. Needless to say, it stung, coming only days after my mother's funeral. Story 4. I got disowned, and I'm better for it. I was 14 when my mom handed me my birth certificate and social security card and told me to get the out, and she hasn't talked to me since. I'm 33 now. For many years, I yearned to have my mother back, but just recently, in the last couple of years, I finally realized I'm better without her, and probably wouldn't be where I am in life with her. Why did I get the boot? I was a problem child, likely lack of parenting. They said they didn't want me to be a bad influence on my half-siblings. I think they just didn't want to deal with me, I guess. I am the most successful of all of my siblings by a country mile. I still can't fathom how a parent disowns a child, but at least I stopped trying. I don't need to understand her f***ed up head. That's her problem. Story 5. This is from my social psychology professor back in college. She had 4 kids, but the 4th she adopted. When her youngest son was in grade school, he had a best friend who would come over every day after school, do housework, and even eat dinner with them. This kid barely ever went home. One day she calls the parents and starts to inquire to his family life. Well-to-do family, had food, shelter, and nearly everything. The parents, though, didn't want to, be parents anymore. No offense to the kid. They wanted to travel the world, go on cruises, live an expensive life together without him tagging along. So they came to an agreement. My teacher would adopt said kid, and his biological parents would put money into an account for him every month. And it worked. They traveled and paid money to have someone else raise their kid, and the kid was included into a now loving family. Well, it's encouraging to hear stories of people who are willing to step up and help others, especially when it comes to providing a home and a family for children in need. In this particular case, it's clear that the adopted child was welcomed with open arms by his new family and that they were able to form close bonds that lasted a lifetime. What's particularly interesting about this story is that it shows how unconventional family arrangements can work out well for everyone involved, even when the circumstances are less than ideal. Story 6. I've disowned one of my siblings. Still have 5 other siblings. My sister is just a horrible person. She's the youngest of the 7, and she's been rotten since she was a teenager. She is much younger than the rest of us, so while the other 6 grew up together, she was almost like an only child. She treats everybody in her life like they're here to serve her needs. Some of the things she's put our mother through are truly horrible. I wouldn't give a if she just disappeared forever. Story 7. My father disowned me when I was 11 because I took my mom's side in their divorce, like I had any idea what was going on. I have 2 younger brothers by him, and he would take them on family vacations and leave me behind and such. I estranged myself from my mom as soon as I could move out for college because she has several screws loose and had effectively disowned me while living in the same home. One time when I was about 16, I got really sick and could barely breathe in the middle of the night, so I drove myself to the ER. I was in excruciating pain, but because I wasn't 18, the ER couldn't treat me without parental consent. No dad, so had to be mom. Instead of rushing to the hospital, she went back to sleep. When she did get up, she went to the gym for lap swimming and eventually got to the ER maybe 8 hours later. After the divorce, my mom had custody of me and my 2 younger brothers, and we were really impoverished. Half the time our water was shut off, we lived in squalor, and she declared bankruptcy twice. In the midst of our dire situation, she decided to spend several $1,000s, I don't know where from, to have herself artificially inseminated to have another kid. My theory is that she was basically giving up on me and wanted to start over with a new kid that also wasn't anyone but hers, not from my father. How bad of a kid was I? I was depressed, I wonder why, from the time of their divorce until I moved out of my mom's house. I've never smoked, never committed a crime, started college at 16, helped me to get away, always on the dean's list, volunteered every week at a local church, one of my punishments in high school was not being allowed to go to church, volunteered in the Middle East for 2 years, earned a master's degree from Harvard, and am currently an adjunct professor. So I'm an all-around degenerate and underachiever. I'm back in contact with both of my parents now, but I recognize I will never have a parent-son relationship with either of them. I'm primarily in contact with my mom so I can help protect my littlest brother from her, since he still lives with her, the one that came from her self-artificial insemination. He actually just broke his tailbone the other day, and she doesn't have health insurance for him, and she said he doesn't need an x-ray, even though he can barely walk. I don't know what I can do, really. So, yeah, I'll cry at their funerals, but only because it will remind me that I never had real parents. Story 8. I disowned my son and kicked him out of the house. He was 8 or 9 at the time and was mad all day and being a jerk to everyone. Finally, he yelled at my wife and said he wished he wasn't part of our family. So I said fine and kicked him out. I gave him time to pack 1 suitcase. He went and lived in a tent in the corner of the garden. He got a bit cold because he didn't pack a sweater. Later, he got hungry, so I followed him to the store where he bought some food with his own money. He was thirsty, and I let him fill up his water bottle he got out of the recycling, but I charged him 10 cents. About bedtime, he was sad and lonely and cold, so he came in and apologized and said he wanted to be in our family again. For a kid of just 8 or 9, I think this is a bit extreme. I understand you're trying to teach him that he doesn't appreciate all of what his family provides him every day, but you probably should have just talked about the actual issue that was making him feel upset all day. Calling your 8-year-old son a jerk seems to indicate to me that you haven't been parenting/dealing with problems in an ideal manner. He's your child, for God's sake. He doesn't just depend on you for food and shelter, but for love and compassion. Story 9. My parents didn't disown me. I was just a weird mistake. My mother never wanted a child. She bailed after a few months. My father was a single parent and ended up in prison, life without parole. When I was 14, I finally met my mother. She was a police detective by the time I moved in with her. She threw me out after 2 months. I am 30 now, and life is typically a little weird around the holidays, but I always get a good laugh when I tell people that my father is in prison for life and my mother is a cop. But then they get super awkward when I tell them that no, it's not a joke. It took a long time for me to come to terms with it, but I know now that none of it was my fault. Story 10. I asked my biological father at 28 why he never tried to see me after he and my mom got a divorce. He said he never wanted to try for any custody arrangement because that meant he would have to pay child support. So the fear of child support led him to stop talking to his 9-year-old. He's currently doing the same thing to my 2 younger half-sisters. Some people just really shouldn't be parents. Please leave your story down below in the comments. I would absolutely love to make a video about them in the future. And also don't forget to like and subscribe. And until next time, peace.